But first, President Trump's attorney, Rudy Giuliani, said Sunday that despite multiple denials during the campaign, his client continued conversations about building a tower in Moscow until November 2016. Now Giuliani is trying to walk back his comments in a written statement yesterday. Quote, "My recent statements," this is the president's attorney, "my recent statements about discussions during the 2016 campaign between Michael Cohen and then-candidate Donald Trump about a potential Trump-Moscow project were hypothetical and not based on conversations I had with the president. My comments did not represent the actual timing or circumstances of any such discussions. The point is that the proposal was in the earliest stage and did not advance beyond a free, non-binding letter of intent." However, speaking to the New York Times on Sunday, Giuliani quoted what President Trump allegedly said to him, that the Trump Tower Moscow discussions were, quote, "going on from the day I announced to the day I won." In light of his written statement, the New Yorker magazine asked Giuliani about what he told the Times, and Giuliani replied, "I did not say that." Asked if the Times just made the quote up, Giuliani said, "I don't know if they made it up. What I was talking about was if he had those conversations, they would not be criminal."
This, Mika,
it's hard to follow, Willie.
It is. The New York Times is reporting there's frustration with Giuliani within Trump's inner circle. The piece quotes, "Several people close to Mr. Trump have grown exasperated with Mr. Giuliani's public appearances. They also express concern that he is increasing prosecutors' anger with the president and potentially creating a misimpression about the Trump Tower project in Moscow." In an interview last night with Fox News, the president's son, Donald Trump Jr., denied that he and the Trump campaign knew anything about the project.
When was the last discussion about this Trump Tower deal? Because Rudy got everybody really confused, I have to say. He goes on Meet the Press and he says, well, it could have been like right through the election. Then he said he was talking in hypothetical terms today.
Yeah, I don't know. I don't talk about things that I don't know about. But, you know, unfortunately, that sometimes happens, no different than anyone else. But the reality is this wasn't a deal. You know, we don't know the developer. We don't know the site. We don't know anything about it. Ultimately, it was Michael Cohen essentially trying to get a deal done. You know, he was there for a long time. He wasn't exactly a deal guy. Didn't bring too many to the table. So I don't think anyone took it all that seriously. That's the reality of what went on.
In September 2017, Trump Jr. testified to the Senate Judiciary Committee that he knew, quote, very little about the project, except that his father had signed a letter of intent in 2015, Mika.
And then another exchange from Rudy Giuliani's interview with The New Yorker yesterday. He was asked, saying things for Trump, not always being truthful about it. Do you ever worry that this will be your legacy? Does that ever worry you in any way? Giuliani responded like this: absolutely. I'm afraid it will be on my gravestone. Rudy Giuliani, he lied for Trump. Somehow I don't think that'll be it. But if it is, so what do I care? I'll be dead. I figure I can explain it to St. Peter. He will be on my side because I am so far. I don't think as a lawyer I ever said anything that's untruthful. I have a sense of ethics that is as high as anybody you can imagine. I've been doing this forever. I am doing what I believe in. I may not always be right, but I am doing what I believe. Susan Del Percio, didn't you work for him? And does this look like the same individual you worked for? What's going on here?
This is not the America's mayor that I knew. This is a different Rudy Giuliani. He obviously doesn't care about his legacy. He's out there supporting the president blindly and maybe not with all the information. I wish you could see it, Mika, years ago when he used to give his reports, budget reports, everything. He'd do it completely unscripted, have every fact down, was able to deliver an hour-long speech and not miss a beat. And it seems that this is just a different Rudy Giuliani now, and he's more concerned about staying relevant and in the news media than he is definitely about his legacy.
So, Gene Robinson, we'll talk about the content and go back through what Rudy Giuliani said, but let's take his premise here as he responds to all this controversy. He says, I was speaking in a hypothetical and not based on conversations with the president. Well, he's representing himself as the attorney for Donald Trump when he goes on TV, so I guess we work under the assumption that he has spoken to his client and is now relaying the president's position on all these matters. If he's going on TV and freelancing, what's the point of even interviewing him?
Well, that is the question, Willie. Why would you talk to Rudy Giuliani or pay the slightest attention to what he says if not for the fact that he represents the president? He was with the president in the campaign. He's known to be close to the president. He's one of the people who can pick up the phone and call Donald Trump, or who Donald Trump picks up the phone and calls Rudy Giuliani. So, of course, you assume this is based on some nugget of information at the very least. So his defense is, I guess, that I'm just making stuff up. And if he's just making stuff up, we can't pay any attention to him. This is really crazy because he's not doing his client any good. One understands why people in the White House and other people on the legal team would be enormously frustrated at this. It's one thing to sow confusion as a diversionary tactic, but this has gone beyond that to something else that's not good for the president.
So, Mike Barnacle, I think it would be a sad exercise to figure out what's going on with him, but what about the story? What about pulling back big picture? Do his errors, do his misstatements, do his lies matter in the long term?
Well, you know, we don't know, Mika, because we don't know if they're lies. We don't know if they're just mistaken statements that he makes. It's so hard to follow him. The New Yorker interview that you just referenced. Yeah. Here's another example. This is out of the New Yorker. He's talking about the BuzzFeed story. But I can tell you from the moment I read the story, I knew the story was false. The interviewer says, because. Rudy then says, because I have been through all the tapes. I have been through all the texts. I have been through all the emails, and I knew none existed. The interviewer then says, wait, what tapes have you gone through? Oh, I shouldn't have said tapes, Rudy says. They allege they... You just never know with him the level of incompetence that he is bringing to this, whether it's planned or unplanned. Only he knows. And Jim, I have never seen this before in a representative of the President of the United States, but we are continually getting into uncharted waters, seemingly by the hour.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, but to be clear on one thing, like Rudy does talk to Trump all the time. And so when he comes out there and he goes on Meet the Press and then calls the New York Times and says that he definitely was involved in this Moscow deal from beginning to end on the campaign, it's hard for me to believe that he was just freelancing and that he misspoke. Right. 24 hours later, he comes back and says, that's not true. Why? Because his admission would be one of the biggest bombshells that we've had since the beginning of this Russia investigation. He was essentially on the record admitting that a candidate for President of the United States was working on a multi-billion-dollar business deal with Vladimir Putin's Russia while running for president, and telling the American people that he wasn't working on that deal while Russia was trying to tip the election in his favor. That fact set is devastating for Trump. It goes to the heart of what Mueller's looking at. So I find it hard to believe he just happened to say that, because he knows what was in those written answers from Trump to the special prosecutor. He knows a lot more than we do about what Mueller knows. And so in the flurry of all the things of, is this a big deal? Is that a big deal? This is a big deal. This is a big deal because it goes to what would Russia have that they could dangle over the head of the president when he was a candidate or now when he's president. They know how much negotiations were going on the Moscow deal. So if Trump was involved and it was more extensive than we were led to believe, that's a big deal.
And Mika, that's exactly why you can't ever discount the existence of tapes, as he just popped out.
Right.
Well, it was nice of him to volunteer it, to figure out exactly what's going on. I mean, Willie, this just feels like everyone's ping-ponging with the truth, just trying to get by. By the way, how many days has it been, not just since the shutdown began, but since we've had a White House press briefing where we can ask questions?
Longest.
I believe it's been quite some time.
Yeah, since mid-December, longest stretch of this presidency. I think Jim's absolutely right, Susan, too. This is not a slip of the tongue. Giuliani has said this a couple of times. We talked about what he said to the New York Times, quoting the president, saying discussions were going on from the day I announced to the day I won. He also told ABC back in December it would have covered all the way up to November of 2016. So when he's talking to Chuck on Meet the Press, that was not a slip of the tongue. Now he's trying to clean up that mess. But I will say, I'm not so sure Donald Trump actually does mind this. He loves Rudy Giuliani personally, and he likes any smokescreen that's thrown up, whether it's based in fact or not, that confuses the public.
Well, and to go what Jim was saying, they do speak all the time, and that's now also added to this White House intrigue. Yes, people are frustrated with Rudy Giuliani in the White House, but here's the other thing. Rudy Giuliani's very frustrated where he is right now with the folks in the White House as well. This is a back and forth that Rudy just didn't think he'd find himself in the middle of. But he definitely is acting with the president's consent on what he's doing going forward. And again, we're leading off with this story, and I know we're going to be talking about the shutdown, but that's exactly what the president doesn't want us talking about.
Here we go.
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.